Okay, very nice to see you all and nice to be here. This is actually the second time I'm delivering this lecture. It's all new content. The thing that I think is driving this lecture is the fact that we all have something very big in common. We're all urban sketchers, and you know, that's absolutely great. There are a whole set of unique problems that come along with urban sketching. And they're different from, you know, other forms of art. It's different than working in a studio. It's different than being a plein air painter. And so we've got problems on one hand, and we've also got just who we are. And who we are is a group of creative, motivated people. So all around the world, people have been working out solutions to this set of problems that we face. And they're really good solutions, and they're interesting solutions. The other thing about us is that we share. We post our work, we post photographs, we share ideas. So there's sort of an energy to this whole thing where you come up with a good idea and it gets echoed by somebody maybe sitting next to you sketching, maybe in another country. So that's what we're going to be exploring today. After the last lecture, I got a tremendous number of really cool suggestions, and there's about half of an hour that I've got to fit everything in. So I would like to apologize to everybody that was not included in this. So having said that, let's start rolling. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is an issue that so far we've been pretty lucky about, and that's rain. So what happens when it rains? There's a whole set of, you know, possibilities. You listen to the forecast, it's raining, it might rain, maybe it's going to stop, maybe the weather forecast is incorrect, and it will blow over. Do you sit it out, or do you stay? Do you go out and adventure it? My experience is that fortune favors the bold. I have cursed myself when I've been too timid and I've sat at home and it's turned into just a gorgeous day. You can relate, I'm sure. So what happens if you're out there and it starts raining? That's what happens. This is the classical solution. And I have a number of sketches that I've done of fellow sketchers that are sitting under an umbrella and they're busy sketching away. Not only that, I've had people do sketches of me sitting under my umbrella. I've had tourists walk by and are struck by how cute this is and, you know, how artsy it is, you know, that, you know, here's somebody, you know, he's passionate about his art. But the question for you is there a better solution? I got this suggestion from Alvin Wong. Alvin is with the Hong Kong Urban Sketchers, and when he suggested that I click on a link to see this, I loved it. Look at this thing. It's got a shoulder harness, it's got a canopy, it's got a clear screen. Now, admittedly, the person that's doing this sketching is doing photography, but it could easily apply to what we're doing. Here's a few more shots. Because it's on your shoulders, it's possibly secure enough so that it would survive a decent wind. So the question you're asking, the question I asked is, how much? $75 US was the best price I could find for it. And I've got to tell you, at that price, I did not field test it. I submitted to you for, you know, your approval and maybe for you to try. So, moving on from there, maybe there's a less expensive way to do this. This one comes from Katie Woodward, who sketches with my group, the New York City Urban Sketchers. This thing is a hat that you can wear, and it's an umbrella hat. So take a look at the pictures there on the left side. And if I don't know if it's large enough. Can you see the couple that are riding on a bicycle? I'm pretty sure that this is not possible. I'm pretty sure that anything other than somebody sneezing, anything more significant than that, and this thing is going to go flying off. On the plus side, cost when I researched this, $15 US. So there's a real difference between sketching in your studio or at home and being out and doing urban sketching. And there's something really luxurious about having a broad table in front of you. And you have your water, and you've got lights, and you've got inks and paints, and brushes are spread out, and pencils, and everything that you like to use. When you're doing urban sketching, you're juggling. So when I was at the Manchester Symposium, I went out on a sketch walk, and I ran across Daniel Neese, who sketches with Urban Sketches Augsburg, and take a look at Daniel. The man has a table strapped over his shoulder, and he's spread out, and he's comfortable. And I looked at this thing, and I went, that is the coolest solution. So he's actually, it's even more refined than what you're seeing. The shoulder straps adjust so that it's the perfect height. Daniel's a tall guy. He wears this thing over his shoulder and he walks around with it. When you actually see it, he's got Velcro strips that are holding down his palette. The water cup is Velcroed down and nothing is moving. You can tilt the thing and nothing moves off of it. And as the last item, he tapes a map of where he's going to so that he's, doesn't get lost. There you go, there's the map. That's from Daniel. So there's a interesting thing that's happening. I always work on paper. But, it's hard not to notice somebody like Rob Sketcherman or in my group, iPad Pat. And these are accomplished artists who are doing gorgeous work on iPads. And there's something about the portability of just having an iPad with you that just is, it's just so alluring. So I had breakfast one time with Rob, and I asked Rob to explain what is the logic of working with an iPad. And Rob said, I'll explain the logic in one word: undo. That is really, really an appealing feature. When I was out sketching with Rob, he said something, if you're like me, you hate the idea of dropping your iPad. I'll say that's an expensive accident. So here's the solution that Rob came up with. It's an arm ring. The thing is secured with a suction cup, and it's stable. And he hasn't dropped it yet. He also draws with an Apple pencil, which is just a brilliant device. It is touch sensitive. You drill down hard and you get a dark line, drill up light and you get a light line, hold it sideways and you get sort of a broad brush, and it imitates a lot of the things that would be familiar to you using a pencil or a brush or something else. He uses Procreate software. Procreate is also available. Procreate is also, and it's very modestly priced. Compared to art supplies, it's an absolute bargain. Are there ever times, I asked Rob, when you don't have your iPad with you? And he said, sure, but I'm never without my iPhone. Same rule. You don't want to drop the iPhone, and he's got a thumb ring that holds the thing secure. I was talking to Paul Heaston about this and saying just how brilliant that was. And Paul reaches into his pocket and takes out his iPhone, and he's got something that's called a loopy that, keeps the thing secure. So there are a number of solutions out there like that. Okay. This is an idea that's from me. When I go sketching, I like the idea of framing the picture. There are a number of sketches that I know that walk around with tape, masking tape or artist tape or painting tape, the blue tape, and they'll tape off a square. And when you lift the tape up, you get a nice crisp line. And it's visually appealing. It frames the thing. I found a solution that is easily portable, easy to do, admittedly probably not as effective, but here is my Stillman and Byrne sketchbook. I keep it in my back pocket. Never leave home without it, right? I cut, out of rigid material, I cut a frame that fits perfectly inside of the sketchbook. Here's an example of some, sketches that I did of street scenes, and they're framed. And I like the look of it. I think it's a good look. I keep a clip on my book. Let's go back to this. I keep my book closed, and that keeps the frame from dropping out. And then I clip the frame down and just draw a frame around it. And I'm ready to draw. I love clever solutions with pallets. And there are a number of pallet solutions here that are really kind of unique. I mentioned this to Jane Blondell, and Jane said, well, you might want to look at this. And she was wearing a very nice pendant, brooch, whatever you'd call it. She opened the thing up, and inside was a mini palette with wells for 7 colors and a mixing area. And I just loved it. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I really enjoy. She saw my reaction. She said, well, if you like that, and she reached into her bag, and she comes up with another, the thing on the right is actually lip balm for when your lips get chapped. When she finished it, she created another little mini palette, and she keeps this on a key ring. So, this idea is from Peter Holden, who is sitting right in front of me. After delivering the last presentation, Peter came over and said, I got something to show you. I have the world's smallest, lightest, most clever chair ever invented. And do you want to see it? So, of course I want to see it. He takes out this long belt, and he wraps it around, and he sits down, and he wraps it around his back and across his legs. And what he explains to me is the whole point of sitting, for me, is the ability to lean back. And as a guy that owns a stool that hasn't got a backrest, I kind of get that, leaning back is a good thing. Here he goes. There you go. World's smallest chair. The extra refinement on that is that he also has a cushion that he keeps, which is also tiny and very lightweight and a bit insulated, and it keeps him dry and safe. To expand on that idea, this idea came from Ekaterina Osina, who is a sketcher with Urban Sketchers Moscow. And she sent me an email and said, the weather sometimes gets cold in Moscow, and we like to sketch in any kind of weather. And she found a mat in a sporting goods store. She said she actually had stolen this idea from Felix Scheinberger in Germany. And Felix had the cushion, but her improvement on the thing was that her pad has an aluminum layer that insulates and kind of reflects the cold. After the lecture, David Cooper came up to speak to me. In fact, right after I was done speaking with David, he wanted to show me a work surface that he had created. Now, the work surface folds in half, and when he opened it up, there was the paper that he was going to use that day. And with Velcro strips, he had a solution that held down his water, and he actually had a double well. So there was clean water and dirty water. I thought this was marvelously creative. And I asked him, and it was also beautifully made, and I said, "You must be pretty handy." And he said, "Well, yeah, he is." And it turns out that David Cooper is one of a handful of people in the world who hand makes brass pallets. And these things are works of art. I mean, it takes them a long time to make them. And when I become a rich man, I want to buy one of David's pallets. He's got a website, and if you'd like to take a look at them, they are classic paint boxes. And each one, as I said, is handmade, special for you. Got this one from Katie Woodward, who sketches with the New York City group. And we do all of our sketching in the daylight, because how can you sketch at night? So here's the backstory on this. Katie was invited to a special occasion on the USS Intrepid, which is this aircraft carrier that is docked in New York Harbor. And it's been, furloughed, and it's sort of a museum now. The event that she went to was the Battle of the Battle of the Big Bands, and everybody was encouraged to come dressed in vintage clothing. So everybody was there, festive, and there was a lot of swing dancing going on. And before she went on the boat, she did a quick sketch of the Intrepid in the upper right-hand corner. And then when she was done dancing, it was time to begin sketching. And what she used was a mighty bright 54-810 hammerhead LED booklight. Cost $22 US. So here's some of the things about why this is a good solution. It's energy efficient. It has 6 LEDs. It puts out 28 lumens of light, which if you're night sketching actually is quite bright, and it's fairly close to your surface. It clips onto your sketchbook. These LED lights last for 100,000 hours. So let's say that every night, as soon as the sun went down, you began sketching, and you didn't stop until the sun came up. I worked out the math. The lights would eventually burn out after 23 years of doing this, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. So I think it's like lifetime guaranteed. There are 2 brightness settings, and the one negative that Katie pointed out was that the switch is positioned in an unfortunate place and accidentally occasionally turns on in her bag. Got an email from Lola Wagner. Lolo is with the Urban Sketchers in Strasbourg, and he really amazed me with what he suggested. And the more I thought about this, the more enthused I became about this as an idea. He says he carries a garbage bag with him. And he listed a few reasons why this is a good idea. What he said was that it's lightweight, first of all, so it's no hardship to be carrying this, compared to some of the things that we lug around. It's very useful, if you're sitting on a portion of the grass where people walk dogs, or places where there's litter or the ground is wet. He also pointed out that if it starts raining really hard, you can throw everything into it. It also occurs to me that we can be good citizens and use the garbage bag as it was originally intended to clean up the areas that we visit. And I kind of like that as a solution. Can also be a raincoat. Excellent, exactly. I got this idea from Eric Sentel, who is with Urban Sketches Melbourne. And Eric was talking about the moment when you're doing a watercolor and then you're ready for the next color, but you don't want to work wet and wet. So you're blowing on your watercolor or you're fanning the thing. And he found a really simple solution. He found a hand crank that's intended for a barbecue. So imagine a barbecue that has charcoals. You want to get the fire going. You crank this thing. It blows out a gust of air, and then the charcoals are going. The coolest thing about this solution, which kind of is nice, is the cost. $3.50 US. So quite an affordable thing to start. Scott Dubar got in touch with me. Scott is with Urban Sketches Charlottesville. That's in Virginia here in the US. And what Scott said is he likes the professional look that you get when you put all of your art equipment into a computer bag. And here we're looking at a leather computer bag. He said the funny thing about this is I don't even own a laptop. I'm not much of a technology guy, but I can't tell you the number of times where I've gone in the winter, and let's say we'll go into a museum to do sketching, and the guards will stop you because you've got a backpack. What Scott says is there's no problem when you're, a highly professional-looking person carrying a computer case. This one was originally pointed out to me by Nancy Walsh, who is with the Urban Sketchers in Kitchener, Waterloo. But she pointed me in the direction of Lor Jakarta, who is with Urban Sketchers France. And I love this idea. What she's got is an open bag that has everything that she needs, and everything is within easy hand reach. All the pens and pencils are pointed up, and they're all fanned out there. And she's got a lot of different pockets and things in this bag that she created. The thing that I think is especially good about this is that the way the thing is configured, she can have a jar of water and keep the jar of water open. So when she's sketching, she's doing this. And that's not what I'm doing. That's not the solution I've got. I think her solution is a lot better. I ran into her here and mentioned that I was going to include her in this presentation. And she showed me the new version of this, improved. And if you run into her, you might ask her to show it to you. Okay. So if you work in a studio or you ever do watercolors on an easel, there is something, I think we'd all agree, that's almost magical that happens when the surface that you're painting is tilted. It's almost as if the watercolor comes alive. Gravity is working with you, and depending on the angle that you're using, the thing is highly active or less active. And I know that many people, will do that kind of adjustment. When I sketch, and if I'm sitting in a stool or if I'm standing, it's very hard to get that kind of a tilt going. And I thought that was it. Either you bring an easel or you just work flat. Until I saw a solution that Leslie Sim had discovered. Leslie sketches with my group, New York City Urban Sketchers, and she found, there's Leslie, hi Leslie, she discovered a iPad product. It's a stand that you can use to keep your iPad vertical, so you can sit there and read or do whatever. It's got 6 different adjustments, and this is sort of predicated on the idea that you're sitting at a table or you've got some surface or you're on the ground and you're painting that way. The thing is as thick as a sketchbook and weighs less than a sketchbook, so you can't beat it for portability. Have you ever bought an art supply, something that you thought was going to be great, and then it turned out, not so great. This happened to Meredith Spencer. Meredith Spencer purchased a set of Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2 wax crayons. These are, I don't know if you ever played with them, but they're water soluble. They are very intense colors, and there's a million lovely advantages to the Neocolor 2. This is nothing bad about this product. However, what Meredith found was that they were clunky, and they really didn't suit her, and she put them away, and then hit on the idea of taking the crayons and snipping off a tiny little piece and gluing it down on a pallet. And you really don't need much because these are really intense colors. And now she has a palette of repurposed colors. But because there are so many of them, and she showed it to everybody, she ended up making palettes for everybody in our group. So we're all running around with repurposed Caran d'Ache Neocolor stuff. Got this idea from Ron Macklin. And does anybody work with blue tack? Blue tack, you familiar with it? It feels like putty, it's sticky, and anything you stick it to, it'll stay. And anything you stick it to and then attach something else, it'll stay. So I've seen lots of sketchers using blue tack or products similar to that. So it's a useful idea, but I had never seen anybody do something quite as unique as the solution that Ron worked out. So here's the way Ron works. Ron works with 18 colors in his palette. He only paints with primary colors. So work the math with me. He's got a lot of blues, he's got a lot of yellows, and he's got a lot of reds. And when he's going to do a picture, he picks one of the blues, one of the yellows, and one of the reds, and then he'll start painting. And then if he gets to the point where he's waiting for the thing to dry, because he doesn't own Eric's fan, and he's got to wait or blow on the thing, by the time he gets back, which blue is it? So what he does is he rolls a little ball of blue tack and he sets it beside the color that he's going to use, which allows him not to stress about the color and to focus on the basics. Got this one from Tina Koyama, who sketches with the Seattle group. Back in 2013, Tina decided, no more sketchbooks, I'm going to make my own sketchbooks. And apparently the original sketchbooks were kind of an elaborate affair that had leather covers and were, hi Tina, and were actually quite, quite beautiful. However, most of these books are 72 to 96 pages, and she goes through them very rapidly. And she's also carrying the extra weight. So Tina's insight is, why do I need a cover? I'm going to be carrying this thing for a couple of weeks, and then it's going to go up on her shelf. So she does these things. She makes these books, and she's doing them without covers. And her shelf is filled with, these sketchbooks. The sketchbooks cost Tina $5 to create, and working the math from 2013 to this year, she's gone through 31 sketchbooks. I'm probably underestimating this because I figured 2017 full year. She does 8 sketchbooks a year. So she's powering through them. Good going, Tina. So I'm a big fan of things that serve 2 purposes. A thing that does 2 things. And looking at Instagram, there was a post done by a guy named Ed Mostly. And if you dig in, it turns out his name really isn't Ed Mostly. It's short for Ed Mostly Drawings. And he had this idea. He had a water brush and a bamboo dip pen, and he fused the 2 together. So he sketches with a bamboo pen and then turns it over and then does shading and stuff with the water brush. Somewhat similar and somewhat related. I've got to apologize. I'm not remembering who it is that showed this to me. I really like giving credit. But same person? Cool. Okay. Good to know. At any rate, you know, you have your favorite pen that you're drawing with, and then you are reaching into your bag for something else. His insight is put the two together. Use the pen, flip it over, and then use the pencil or the colored, you know, crayon or whatever it is that you love, which is a great solution unless you lose one of them, which means you lose both of them. So it's interesting where good ideas will come to you. I was in a restaurant, and we're waiting to be seated, and there is a big basket full of crayons and a worksheet. And it's clearly intended for little children and urban sketchers. And, you know, you keep your kid busy while you're ordering the food and waiting for the food to come back. The interesting thing about this one was it was one crayon, and one side was red and the other side was green. Complementary colors. One color's warm, the other color's cool. I mean, there's a lot that you can do with this. Related, there is a product that Caran d'Ache makes, which is a blue and red pencil. And I've seen lots of these. There's actually a store in New York City called the Pencil Store, and they must have 8 different varieties of these. And they all are red and blue, and you can draw with them. And they're great to draw with. The thing that is unique about the Caran d'Ache that makes it especially exciting for people like us is that they're water soluble. So I use them to do drawing. I use them to tint and ink drawing, you know, with a little red, a little blue. I use them to cool colors and warm colors. And the interesting thing is you mix the red and the blue lightly, you sort of get purple. But if you drill down hard and you get a dark red and you get a dark blue, what you're actually looking at is something that comes close to black. So there's a lot of use you can get out of this one thing, which is, I think, absolutely wonderful. I love dip pens. Problem with dip pens, I think, is that we are all collectively spoiled. It's hard to use a dip pen if you know a fountain pen, and it's got a deep reservoir. It's hard to use a fountain pen if you use a micron pen. You know, we're conditioned to just pens not running out and not having to dip constantly. I had never seen this. Apparently, this is a solution that is well known. I'm not seeing anybody nodding, so maybe this is new to you, but if you look for this, you see loads of different examples of this, and it's pretty easy to get. This coil, when you dip it in the ink, holds a tremendous amount of ink, and you can kind of sketch away with it. I'm not sure. The question was, how is it attached? Talking about micron pens, I love micron pens, and I love their cousins. I think they're all good. My experience with them is that they run out of ink at the most inconvenient time. So every urban sketcher I know carries several. They also have a remarkably short shelf life. However, they're great to work with. So in researching this, what I discovered was there's a whole thing about how you can reload a micron pen. Don't bother. I tried it, and it is a mess to try to do. The hole is quite tiny. I'm pretty sure that they get the ink in with a high pressure, blower. And I'm also pretty sure that it's specialized ink of some kind and not the ink that I was using. However, it is pretty easy to extend the life of your micron pen, and it's not hard to do. Open up the micron pen, get a pair of pliers, pull the point out. Never did that. I mean, there's this entire thing that kind of is behind the point. Put the point down, go to the back. The back can be pulled off. It's actually a little difficult to do that. That's actually the hardest part of this. When you open the thing up, there's sort of a sponge thing that tops the reservoir to keep the thing from leaking, and then pull out the tube that has the ink. Turn it around so the back is now the front and the front is the back. Put the cap on, slide the thing in, and you've got a new lease on life. To give credit where credit is due, I got this idea from the Tangled Tranquility website, and they had a Sakura pen tutorial. I was contacted by Aditya Vagankwar, who is with Urban Sketchers Mumbai. And does anybody here have one of these Vive color sheets? There's several people here that have it. They reached out to several of us and wanted us to test it. Aditya worked with Rohan, his brother, to create this product. And what it is it's a booklet about the size of a Post-it note. And each sheet, when you open it, has color. And it's fairly intense color. And you take a water brush or a regular brush and dip it in, and then mix the color either on your page or on a separate palette and all. Wait for it to dry, and then close it, and little tiny thing, and it has your entire palette there. Backstory on this is Aditya is a student pursuing a medical degree, and in some lab or something they were doing something with staining, and that put the idea in his head. And he worked on this for about 2 years. I believe that this is about to become a product and will be made available, and I'm sure Aditya will find some way of reaching out to his fellow urban sketchers. Got this idea from Eileen Goldenberg, who sketches with San Francisco. And the first night that I got here, I ran into Eileen and got to personally thank her. Eileen's insight is that smart sketching, I don't have my backpack with me, but you should see what a hypocrite I am. Smart sketching is having everything that you need in one pocket. And that is not what I'm doing, not by a long shot. I mean, I'm lugging around 15 or 20 pounds worth of stuff and all. And when you look at her setup, there's her pocket. There's everything that she needs. Oh, there's Eileen. Eileen, you here? There she is. She's got her sketchbook journal. She's got the Vive color sheets, which are tiny, as I said. She carries 1 or 2 fountain pens. One of them is generally a bent nib, a Fuda style pen, a water brush, and paper towels, and that's it. I admire you. This next one is really sort of going to be an experiment. This is something that I discovered on the internet. I must have played this thing over, 20 times. I was just fascinated with it. And my ability to share it with you is really going to depend on whether we've got a good internet signal. It was posted by a guy named Anatoly Rezapalevi, and Anatoly made it very clear this is not him, and that he's actually trying to find the person. Let me see if I can play this for you now. Hang on. There it is. So what you're looking at is a piece of elastic that's nailed down so that that piece of elastic, the 2 places where it's stuck are the 2 vanishing points. And he's moving it with a paper clip, and it's simple, brilliant perspective. Look at this thing. I love it. And the horizon line, yeah, exactly. Got this one from Herb Reed. Herb, you here? There he is. Herb sketches with the Dallas-Fort Worth group. What Herb said is that the things that make life good for him are Velcro strips, high-density polyethylene boards, magnets, high-powered magnets, these little tiny magnets, and JB Weld epoxy, which is a two-step epoxy. And there you can see all of these things kind of put together. This is Herb's sketchboard. The pallet that you're looking at, I'll have a lot more to say about this pallet in just a moment, has Velcro strips on the back, and you put it down. And what you're not seeing, up in the upper left-hand corner, is a magnet that has been embedded in the polyethylene board. And that magnet has a reciprocal in his water cup. Do I have a picture of the water cup? Yeah, there's the water cup. And that's how he sketches. That's the entire, he's got a handle to the thing, and that's his walk around. So hold on to this thought about the palette that you just saw that Herb is using. I'd like to talk for a moment about the future of urban sketching. The last presentation that I did, I mentioned a product called Google Tilt Brush. These are virtual reality painting where you can create a painting all around you. And I'm not exactly sure how an urban sketcher would use this, but it just seemed so cool, and I figured, given how inventive we are, we'd find some way. So, park that idea. This idea sort of starts, this view of the future starts with Mike Daikubara. Mike, you here? There he is, all the way in the back. So there's Mike. Mike found himself, had become something of a palette junkie. He was on a quest. What Mike wanted was the perfect palette. And he had like criteria that he had worked out. So here's some of his criteria. It has to fit in my hand correctly. It has to feel right. He uses about 20 colors, so it has to have enough slots for colors. He cleans his brush with a sponge, so there's got to be a place that'll hold the sponge. He really doesn't need much of a mixing area, since most of the mixing he's doing is on the paper itself. So he went through one palette after another, and basically sort of came up with the idea that the koi, the Sakura Koi palette, was the closest thing to it. It had a lot of the things that he liked, but not everything. The thing that I should add to this, so that you could help to understand where we're going, is Mike is an industrial designer. So what he did was said, let me just use this as the base and let me create the insert in the koi that absolutely fits my needs. And he used a 3D printer to do this. So let's think for a moment about 3D printing. So the first thing that comes to mind is you could do artwork with a 3D printer. And while that might be true, it's not really the focus of the presentation I'm doing. The presentation I'm doing has to do with the idea of what could we do with a 3D printer. There are a couple of trends that sort of play into this. 3D printers were, when they first came out, extraordinarily expensive. The prices come down significantly, and it's expected that they're going to go down quite a bit further. Second trend, most people that are looking at the future are saying, this thing is going to be as common as printers are in our houses. You'll probably own a 3D printer at some point or another if these forecasts are true. The last item is that the software that you need in order to create things with it are the sort of thing that an industrial designer like Mike would feel comfortable with, but the tools are getting easier and easier. So, what could we do with a thing like that? If we had a 3D printer, we could create drawing boards. We could create cases and holders and containers and bags for our supplies. We could create pallets, the pallet that you want, the half pans and the full pans that we're buying from art supply stores, water cups, instant frames like that little frame thing that I showed you. You could create one like that. Pencil extenders. Last slide. A desktop easel like the one that I showed you and all. You know, the truth of the matter is I'm just throwing ideas out, and the ideas that we'll come up with didn't even occur to me, and these ideas probably might not even exist at this point. Because, there we go. There really is no limit for the creative and the motivated. And one thing I can say with certainty, we are creative and we are motivated. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.